scholars. And so we have Josh on, who thinks that free will has to exist, and then a conjunction to that, which is that if it doesn't exist, then punishing criminals is immoral. Josh, you are on with Mike and Johnny. What's going on?
How you guys doing? Hello?
Yep. We're doing great.
Doing great.
I hear you.
Hello?
Yep.
All right.
Doing great.
Well, basically, my position on free will in regard... Well, can I get your gentleman's perspective? Do either one of you believe in free will, or are you guys determinists?
Yeah. So no, I don't believe in free will. I'm kind of navigating in from compatibilism and determinism, but I've been predominantly a determinist.
Me too, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But how about you?
Okay,
you say that free will has to exist, Josh. So tell us why it has to exist.
Yeah. Well, I believe that there's I feel like atheists tend to dodge this part of the question. Basically, if free will is, as they say, I don't know, some people have different perspectives on it, but if free will is truly an illusion, then atheists had to acknowledge that us punishing criminals is technically immoral because we're punishing them for something they cannot control.
Yeah, I was going to kind of back up for a second.
Josh, you kind of skipped over something, Josh. You said free will has to exist. Okay, why? You just kind of jumped to steps 2 and 3 there.
Yeah, and let me add real fast, because you did say atheists like to dodge this, so I don't want this to be prompting you up for what you think that is. Yeah. You on the show notes, it says, I think that free will has to exist, and then you have a conditional statement. The conditional statement is, if it doesn't exist, then punishing criminals is immoral, right? So to be proper, I feel like it'd be best to go at the antecedent, the very first part. I think that free will has to exist. I don't really feel like it's fair for someone just to make that assertion and then go to the implication of the argument. So let's start with the fact that you think free will has to exist.
Yes, why? Give us our reasons why. I know you think it and you believe it, but give us your reasons why we should believe it too.
Whenever you seem to confront atheists on it, they say, oh yeah, well we're still studying it. We don't completely understand it. But human being thinking is way too complex for it to be just cells moving around and making you do certain actions.
Okay, so I'm sorry to cut you off immediately. But we're already on some really bad territory, because you're going into what atheists think. I don't care about that. I don't care about a preamble. I'm not trying to be rude. I care about the argument that you have, or the inductive evidence, abductive assessment, whatever it is that you have, right? What is it that you're presenting for the case that free will has to exist? And if your first words out of your mouth is you or atheists, you've already lost, even presenting an argument.
Josh, forget about those pesky atheists. I want you to present your evidence or your argument and evidence in support of your argument. And I think you said thinking is way too complex for a bunch of brain cells rubbing up against each other or something like that. Could you restate that?
Brains, that's essentially what they think. That's essentially what they think. They don't think that there's an agent making choices. They think it's just cells moving around and reacting to their environment.
All right. So I'm just gonna ignore the they thinking that, because again, I asked you, Josh, to ignore those pesky, mischievous, hijinks-filled atheists and just talk about your evidence for the existence of free will. And so, again, we're trimming it down. We're trimming all the fat off here. And you're saying human thought is too complicated to be attributed to brain cells just interacting. Okay? So why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's based around decisions that are made in regards to people. I didn't make the choice. In theory, according to you, I didn't make the choice to call in here today. I'm a product of my environment. I'm doing stuff.
So you're kind of begging the question. You're just right now. Well, hold on, Josh, real fast. You're just restating the claim. Yep. And then you're just saying what it is we believe, which is not good. If we were going to actually try to make progress in the conversation, we're not going to make any progress, because it seems to be you're putting up the gloves for some reason, and I'm not understanding why you want to do that. Like we could make some actual intellectual progress on this and maybe change positions. But when you tell me like atheists think this or they think that, it seems to be very heavily tied emotionally to you, and that to me is already a red flag. The implication we haven't gotten to yet, but you have something emotionally tied there as well. And so for me, I don't give a shit if my feelings correspond to whether or not free will is true or it's not, or whether it is the fact that I'm doing talk Heathen determined in some aspects of cosmological or biological implications that get me to where I'm at. Like, I'm having the experience. I'm enjoying the experience. Those are
you though, Mike? Are you?
Maybe not. Maybe okay. Maybe not. I don't know.
Checking.
I'm determined to.
Determined to.
But I don't care about how I feel about it, right? Like I care about what is true. And you seems like you're obfuscating truth with how you feel about truth. And if it was up to me, if I just wanted to believe something, I'd believe in libertarian free will. But I'm not going to kid myself and lie to myself based on the purported evidence to the contrary, right? So what is it like that you have that gets you to free will outside of it's uncomfortable to you? Because that's the only thing all of what you said is translated to me, is that I'm just uncomfortable with the idea of determinism. I don't care about that when I assess truth. That's not why I'm an atheist. It'd be cool to know that I live on and see my family and people like that. And depending on what God, that might be cool, but I don't care about my feelings about it. I care about what points to the case. So what is that for you?
Yeah.
Well, the whole purpose, I didn't say call in to say I had proportional evidence to free will.
Well, let's look at the statement. Let's look at the statement. Your statement is that I think that free will has to exist, right?
Yeah.
You're making a claim. You think it has to exist. You have an implication and a qualifier. Josh, listen real fast. I know I'm not being as fair to you, but we're trying to be systematic on this. You have to look at what your qualifier is. You said has to exist, right? Has to exist means that you have some reasons for why that's the case. What are those reasons? You keep avoiding that part.
I gave you all the reasons. You're basically just saying that it does.
You didn't give me a single reason. What was one of the reasons? Restate one of the reasons.
Restate one of the reasons. Okay. Maybe we missed it because it does feel. Josh, I'm going to do this thing again. Cool down. We put on our matching, atheist jumpsuits on one leg at a time. All right. So just walk us through the process, because like I said, I'm not certain whether I have free will or not. I lean toward determinism, but I don't really have an emotional stake in it. I know that the question of free will versus determinism isn't a binary set of propositions. So walk us through your evidence, why you think that free will has to exist, and if it's merely because human thought is so complex it just can't be a result of deterministic forces, then explain to us why that is the case, and then we can go on to your next point. But just asserting a belief is not going to cut it on any of these shows. You're going to have to show your work, and if you can't show your work, then cool story, bro. But really, Josh, come on, give it to us, because this is interesting. We were talking about this before the show. We want to know what you think, because there's lots of ways to approach this conversation.
We cannot function on the basis that free will isn't real. That's what I'm saying. We cannot function on that basis.
That's not an argument. That is not an argument. Josh, that isn't an argument.
It's an assertion.
Accountable.
No. Listen, Josh. That's like saying, like when you say we wouldn't be able to act if it was this case, is not an argument to the positive assertion that you have for the reasons why we should purport our reasoning to the evidence, which is the case that free will exists, or in this case, I guess libertarian free will. Stating that we wouldn't be able to do X if it wasn't is not an argument. That is the second part of this is why we broke this down, right? And if you go back and listen, I specifically went to the verbiage that's used. I think that free will has to exist, and then you have you have a conditional. And if it doesn't exist, or an implication, then it doesn't exist, then punishing criminals is immoral, right? But I want to talk about the independent attestation for the free will has to exist. You keep going to, we wouldn't be able to function. We wouldn't be able to do X, Y, or Z. That's not an argument. That's just stating what you think. I care about the argument, the inductive argument, or the premises, or whatever you have for it, not how you feel.
And it might just be that you can't personally understand how we could function. You haven't asserted why it's logically impossible, or it's just impossible. You're just saying we couldn't. Well, why couldn't we?
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Why are you criticizing? Why are you criticizing me for my views?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm muting Josh, and I'll tell you why I'm going to mute Josh, Mike. I don't want to step on your feet as host.
No,
but
you're fine. I feel like I'm stepping on yours, so that's my bad.
No, you're cool, dude. We're all fine here. Josh, calm down. I know that's not what you say to a person when they're agitated, but I can mute him. Josh, it's okay. We're having a conversation here. Slow down. If you say, well, I don't know, or I'm trying to explain it to you guys, but you're too dense, or give me a chance to speak and I will go ahead and explain exactly why. But getting more irritated isn't going to work, because Johnny and J Mike, we're just as zen as fuck. Okay, so go ahead. We'll put you back off mute here. Start over again, please. I know I'm being passive aggressive and snarky. I read the comments. Go ahead. What do you got, Josh, please?
Without the idea of free will, it is basically, even if determinism, that's basically supporting that we are mentally incapable of making our own choices. So let's say for instance, a guy was driving down the street. He had a stroke while driving. He had a stroke, and it impaired him and made him pass out. And he drove off the road and hit somebody and killed them. Would it be wrong to jail that person for something that was mentally incapable of them? They couldn't physically do anything about that. Would it be immoral?
Let me answer, because I'm already mildly frustrated with you, Josh, because you keep going to the implication, and we can get there, right? Like, we can get to where you want to go about the implications of it. But no, stop. I've asked you very specifically for the initial statement that you made, the initial claim, which is that free will has to exist, right? You moved past that. You never gave any argument, any independent attestation for why you think that's the case. You just said, you've just moved to the second part, that if it wasn't the case, would we jail this person? We can get there, but I need to know why you think free will even exists in the first place. You have two arguments. You should not have started the argument with free will has to exist, when I have problems with that, because we can get into the secondary thing, but you've stated that it has to exist to this call screener. I need to know why you think it exists. You keep going back to moral responsibility. That's fine, but that's not a reason. That's just showing that you feel ways about it, and that's clouding your judgment on what is actually the case based upon the evidence.
Okay, what would hold up as evidence for free will then? Because that is a bogus ass fucking claim.
It's not a bogus ass fucking claim. It's a normal claim, because the fact that you think you can fucking sidestep the rigorous standards we apply in science because it suits your presumption in the first place is not my fucking problem. Because the things I believe in, I don't sidestep that rigorous standard. You might think that that's necessary. Then it is probably necessary to actually get you to holding that position, because the second you actually do go through the process of seeing, hey, peer-reviewed studies, falsification, verification, whatever it might be, that lends the purported inductive evidence to the claim. Anytime I have a belief, I have no problem with that. I don't know why you or anybody else would just want to sidestep a pretty good mechanism that we have, and the mechanisms at which are prompting me to believe determinism is true, as opposed to libertarian free will, because, mind you, it fails in every academic account. It just does.
Yeah, Josh, have you done any research, any scientific reading on? Well, I'm sorry, maybe you were talking while I was talking. There is a delay, but to be fair, Josh, have you done any reading on this by neurologists, on people who study cognition, brain scientists? Have you done any reading on this topic?
And I have, and it's very convenient that all of them are atheists, so they're just kind of viewing what they want to view. That's
okay, Josh, you said you've done some reading. I'd like you to name some of the authors that you've read, so that I can read the same stuff that you've read. Because if I read the same stuff that you've read, and I'm an honest interlocutor, stop talking, and I'm an honest interlocutor, then I should come to the same conclusion as you have, or I'm dishonest or not as smart as you are. So go ahead and list it, because I will go back and I'll watch this and I'll go ahead and read the same stuff that you've read. Go ahead, list some people that you've read and the names of those titles if you have them handy.
Well, the one I kept the most on because I figured it's most relevant, and I'm sure you know who Sam Harris is. He talks about free will and how he thinks free will doesn't exist, and that basically a rapist is not responsible for what he did, acting on his own chromosomes or the cells that are inside his body. We can't punish him. It would be immoral to punish a rapist, right? Because they can't control themselves.
Wow,
right?
Josh, you're really upset about this call. Why are you calling today if you're that upset? Josh, you don't have to talk to us. You can go back to your safe space. Josh. But if you can't, calm down. We're having a conversation. So you read some Sam Harris. Do you have someone else that you would recommend? And what was the particular work by Sam Harris that you read?
It was the what was it? Not moral.
I'm looking at it right now. By the way, it's a really easy book title.
I'll give it to him, J. Mike. He's flustered.
It's
what do you got?
The
moral
there's aspects in the moral landscape, but he has so Sam Harris has a book on free will. It's like 60 something pages, a little red book.
I can read a 50-page book. Yeah, I'll go read it.
It's an interesting read, but first off, like, I'm not sure that. So Sam Harris, that's fine. You can cite Sam Harris, but there are people in philosophy that are necessitarians, right? They're determinists. They believe that God could have only made the world in one way, which to me is like really weird, because it's like this idea of like, did he have free will in choosing it? Apparently not. It was not like he necessarily had to create it one way. So this isn't exclusive. It's weird to me that you draw this dichotomy between that, because there are theists and there are even people who are necessitarians that don't believe in that type of change. Some of them have variations for sure, but I don't know why you're you have this weird dichotomy. Everything that you've presented to me seems so emotionally based rather than determined on the facts. Because Josh, if I was with you, man, on that assessment, on taking what I believe in, I'd believe in libertarian free will too, because it's convenient for me too, because it seems what I would prefer. I don't care about what I prefer. I care about what is true, which is why I'm navigating between compatibilism and determinism. Though, it's something that's admittedly it's hard to make progress in, but you don't get progress done by calling into a show and being pissed off. You just don't.
Yeah.
And also, you don't make progress if you don't address how you came to the conclusion that free will has to exist. Because it seems that if I was to rephrase your argument, or at least not the argument, but the call screen thing that I have, which says, I think free will has to exist, and if it doesn't, then punishing criminals is immoral. It seems that you start with that idea that punishing criminals is immoral, and then you add, well, I'm uncomfortable with it, so therefore free will has to exist. This is why I pressed you on whether or not you could just independently verify the first part for me, because it seems you're not starting there, right? This is like what I would say to certain, I'm not going to name them, but certain Christian philosophers of big names, that I would say they're a Christian first and then a philosopher second. And to me, it seems that you're doing a very similar tactic, and that you're starting with, oh crap, if this isn't true, then that means a whole bunch of implications about moral responsibility that I'm not comfortable with. Well, guess what? That has no indication of whether or not it's true. And if the universe doesn't care about those things, it doesn't care about your feelings in that sense, that's the way it is. For me, as a subjective agent that can handle my feelings, I'm going to try to relate that to reality and recognize that might not be reciprocated back to me. But that's the only way from my perspective that you can get to truth.
J. Mike, if I could, we could generously step into the next part of his argument. Punishing criminals is immoral if free will doesn't exist. I would also reject that assertion as well, because if no free will exists, I'll tell you why, Josh.
The because part, I think, was part of the explanation.
I'm glad you asked, because let's say, for example, that a human being, my conscious mind is merely the bob floating at the end of a fishing line, and it's subject to the ups and downs, the waves, the wind of the massive ocean or lake of experiences and causes behind it, that have caused me to make a decision independent of any free will. Well, then by putting someone in jail, by fining them, by removing them from society for a period of time, or by taking action to change their behavior, you are changing the factors that cause them to behave that way in the first place. And so if it's not their conscious mind making the decision to take a certain action, there's some sort of calculus going on in the individual that is causing them to behave a certain way. And you're just changing those factors, and therefore hopefully you change that behavior, whether free will, based on free will, or determined by the past. In any event, as a person who lives in society, I don't want to be near people who rape, murder, and steal from me. And so I'm going to band together with others who will agree that if one of our people in society chooses to act that way, that we're going to remove them from society for a period of time, keep them away from us so that they don't harm us. And of course, that's balanced with mercy and the understanding that if we were somehow found guilty, we wouldn't want to be thrown in prison forever and ever and tortured and all that kind of stuff, because we don't recognize that as the kind of society that we want to live in or be subject to those laws. And different societies strike a different balance. And so it doesn't seem to be one set way that human beings deal with crime and criminality. Some of them are very rehabilitative.
Societies do not follow that landscape, though. The landscape is you are responsible for your actions. You are subject to a punishment. Is the punishment part is it not even worthwhile to punish a criminal? Or we're just removing him from society and hope he changes rape someone or something like that.
Yeah. So this is something that so I had a debate recently with somebody against a position they hold on morality that I don't feel really works at all in any way, but they have parts in their metaethical thesis that I think actually rings true in a lot of ways, that I think is actually pretty intuitive and is potentially a good stumbling block in these types of conversations. And what I would say to that is this idea of limitations, right? We have certain pragmatic limitations. Like the more that we have technological advances, it seems the more we have the ability to intervene under certain moral dilemmas. I think the example that they gave me, which was far-fetched, but if we had the ability to kind of zap people in and out of where they were or put a force field on them, we would do that in, say, the trolley problem, right? We would have that limitation. Clearly, we don't have that. And so morality deals necessarily with what we can do at the time. I gave this example kind of to Johnny in the back, and he might not agree. It's something that I'm still kind of thinking about, but if you did some action and your goal was to save 1,000 people or whatever it might be, right? You had some goal with what you determine as a good outcome, but the outcome is actually bad. It actually affects 10,000 people negatively, or does something where it's more detrimental. Well, it doesn't matter. You're still morally responsible for the consequences of the action, because it didn't matter if it was against your volition, your will to do otherwise. If it resulted in several thousand people dying, you're morally responsible. And I would argue that most people that are in moral dilemmas, I shouldn't have done that, they didn't have the intention of I want to, in their mindset, I want to do this. It's just the way that it is. And we look at the consequent of the matter. Now that gets into the whole philosophy of consequentialism and deontology and all these types of things. But that's something I for you, I would look into, because there are answers to this and beyond just accepting kind of defeat. But it seems like you're starting with, this makes me uncomfortable, and therefore free will has to exist. That's weird to me.
Yeah, it is a little unusual. Well, not too unusual on these shows, but J. Mike, Josh, I do care about justice being served. I care about the rights of the accused, and I care about the innocent who have been subject to crimes, who have had their bodies, their peace of mind, their psychology, their possessions affected by the selfish actions of others. I am also aware that a lot of times people who commit heinous actions are themselves the victim of heinous actions, and the cycle continues. That doesn't mean that we give them a free pass, that we can't punish them. And by punish, I don't think I know that J. Mike and I are not talking about strapping them to the wheel of pain and causing them agony, but we a lot of times need to remove these people from society. It sounds patronizing, but it's like a timeout. We need to evaluate whether or not they're suitable to return to society. Ideally, there's rehabilitation programs, there's therapy. Some places put more emphasis and energy and resources into fixing what caused an offender to commit those actions that are not in the best interest of society and the individuals in it. Some places will cut off heads.
Stop.
Hold on. Okay, I'm muting you right now, Josh.
You can
I'm
stop
muting you
when
right
you
now.
get your own show to stop people.
You go get your own show, Josh. And I'm just going to monologue now, Josh. So thank you for letting me do that. I appreciate it. But with all that said, the different societies strike different balances. Like I said, some of them cut people's heads off. They will tolerate no thieves. They cut off hands. They some places, like I think in Scandinavia, they have super hippy dippy, touchy feely prisons where no one can be in isolated, solitary confinement. And there are problems when somebody is so dangerous that they will harm whoever is placed in close proximity with them. And yet their laws prevent, and if I got this wrong, chat, I'm sure you'll let me know. They will hire people to hang out with those people. Different societies strike a different balance, and that's an indicator to me that we're all just trying to figure out how to deal with the concept of antisocial, selfless versus selfish actions. And so I can't tell you whether there's free will in any real sense or not, or whether we are determined by factors beyond our control. But I think the way we treat people who take antisocial actions, provided that we're trying to change the behavior and get them out of that role, I don't think it really matters. It's more of a philosophical question, but as a practical level, we deal with criminals in order to prevent them from doing it, because we can't kill them all. It would be wrong for us to kill people for every infraction, but we do want to change behavior. I'm going to unmute you. I hope that you're going to come back, Josh, with a cooperative endeavor to sort of like flesh this out and not to accuse me, J. Mike, or all the atheists of the world of giving criminals a free pass. And here goes the unmute. Let's see what you can do. Go ahead. You are unmuted.
Okay. Well, I wasn't trying to jump on your statement and run the show or anything.
Okay.
Hello.
Cool.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to interrupt you there. I was telling you that I was making you acknowledge of a statement you just said.
Oh. Okay. Great. What do you got? What did I say?
Hello.
Yes. What did I say?
You made a statement based on an assessment that free will was subjective, right? You said it was a subjection, that people can make individual choices and then get punished for them. Oh, it's about controlling society. Well, that's not really a valid argument. That's an argument you're making in the place that we don't, and that you just consume everything you know about free will, basically.
So are you saying that?
Radical
I think I know where you're going, Josh. I think I know where you're going, Josh. I think I know where you're going, Josh. I think that when I talked about individuals who make
do you know
certain...
anything about that?
He's trying to answer you.
I'm trying to, Josh. There's a delay. Josh,
look, I'm ready to move on. I'm about to.
I think we gotta. I think I heard the word asshole, which might be appropriate. Let's just move on. He
didn't. Josh, call back. Present his argument for free will, like literally argument, and that's where my frustration lies, because you laid it out very specifically. If it seemed to be, to me, you had it backwards to say that, you assessed things that you were uncomfortable with moral responsibility and accountability, and then you determined though free will must not exist, which in a syllogism is called affirming the consequent. It's a fallacy. So I would look into that. But anyway, the main point that I wanted to rub up against is the fact that you said it has to it has to be the case that free will must exist. I'm trying to think of how the way to word that. If that is the case, right? If it's the case that it must be the case, then you have some supporting data which you could provide for that. It doesn't seem that you had that. It seemed that it was actually your implication of how uncomfortable it made you feel, and therefore now you can somehow determine that it has to be the case based upon emotional feelings. That was my counter to his. So I would rather see him come in and say, hey, nope, I'm not affirming that. What I'm trying to do is actually say that I have independent reasons beyond just the way I feel about it.
Anyway, we get a lot of calls, and they're primed for a fight. They're primed. Maybe they're primed for a shouting match or something like that.